The Rock ruined his rep and got humbled by the public, so he decided to pull an Adam Sandler and try to reinvent himself as a serious actor. Did it work? Well, haven't done one of these in a while. So The Smashing Machine is an A24 film written and directed by Benny Safdie, who's known for making films like Good Time and Uncut Gems with his brother Josh. But this time he decided to take a chance on The Rock, who was looking to have his first foray into actual dramatic acting and getting away from his typical rock shtick that he's known for doing in big blockbuster films. The Smashing Machine tells the story of former fighter Mark Kerr, who comes from a wrestling background, which is right up The Rock's alley, and was also a very mountainous man, so, The Rock was probably, at least physically, the right person to cast, but can he actually deliver a serious performance where he isn't just playing himself? That was my biggest question going into the film. And I gotta say, even though I'm not the biggest fan of The Rock, especially just his personality and what I've heard from behind the scenes stuff, like everything that came out with Red 1, I was at least interested to see if he could actually pull this off, or if this was just another egomaniacal move by him to, kind of get in the good graces of the public again. Obviously, he's in heavy prosthetics, which, hats off to the makeup and hair department because they made him almost unrecognizable. I mean, obviously you can still tell it's The Rock, but there's so much going on in the face region that you don't see Dwayne Johnson immediately. And I remember the first time that my dad saw this trailer, we were in the theater watching F1, and I'm like, oh yeah, check this out. The Rock thinks he's going to be a serious actor now. And my dad's like, I don't get it. Where's The Rock? And I'm like, no, that's The Rock. And he's like, what? They did a good job at disguising him. Also, covering up all the tattoos he's got on his chest and his arms. That can't be easy, and making it look as natural as they did, again, props to them. They can make him look like the person all they want. How does he actually deliver his performance? Honestly, this was pretty solid. I think he matched the mannerisms and the vocal inflection of Mark Kerr, from what I understand of Mark Kerr, to the best of his ability, and did a really good job at embodying that. Now, I will say that there's a lot of scenes in the start, and I would say for the first two-ish thirds of the film, where I was just like, yeah, okay, he's playing this Mark Kerr guy, but some of it is sprinkled in with some typical Rock acting. But there's a scene between him and Emily Blunt in the third act of the film that really sold me on his performance, where he just lets all the emotion come out, and you really get a grasp of what he can actually bring to the table in a scene like this. That said, I will say there are some moments where he's trying to bring out the emotion, where he actually has to physically cry on screen, and I feel like he was cutting corners with his performance a little bit. I'm always very critical of people when they're cry acting. There's some actors who can do it effortlessly. Elizabeth Olsen, Jeremy Allen White are two that come to mind off the top of my head. But when it comes to The Rock, anytime that he's crying, it seems that he always does this. I'm sitting there waiting. I'm like, okay, take the hands down. Like, I want to see what you're actually, like, I want to see the face. I want to see how you actually look. Like, I'm sorry, that's just kind of cheating. And the sobs, I don't know, I wasn't totally buying it. So like those moments were kind of pulling me out. There are scenes where he's got like a sad, emotional look on his face that I thought was at least decent, where his eyes are kind of welling up, and for that I'll give him credit. But another thing I want to point out is, because of how much prosthetics are actually on his face, again, they did a great job making him look the part, but I feel like in certain ways it was a little restricting in terms of what kind of physical facial expressions he was able to convey. And I understand Mark Kerr looks the way he does, and he's got very prominent eyebrows, but I feel like the way the prosthetics of the eyebrows were set on his forehead, it kind of just had this permanent stern expression on his face, and it just doesn't always allow him to have this dynamic range of facial expressions. And granted, The Rock isn't really known for being very dynamic in his performance, but at the same time, there are plenty of films that I've seen in the past with The Rock where he's got various expressions on his face, and he definitely can emote. You just don't really get that as much. You definitely get the emotion in his line delivery and the way he's his body language, but the facial expression I feel like was a little bit limited just because of how much prosthetics were actually on his face. The real question though, okay, is this award worthy? I don't think so. This is a first time dramatic appearance for The Rock. And while, good on him for taking the risk and trying something new that wasn't just, generic action movie of the week, he definitely has a long way to go before he's ever in that kind of consideration. And the other thing too, I was just talking with a buddy of mine about this. If this movie gets nominations for Best Actor, like if The Rock gets nominated for Best Actor, and then we compare 2 years ago where The Iron Claw got passed up in so many different categories, that's gonna kind of piss me off. I mean, The Iron Claw was basically the film that this wanted to be, but it wasn't. Now, that said, Emily Blunt, her performance was incredible in this film. I mean, Emily Blunt's always great, right? She was great in Oppenheimer. She's great in The Quiet Place. She's great in, Sicario's another one that I love with her. She is excellent in just about everything I've ever seen with her. The thing is, her character's not the best. And I think the biggest problem is she doesn't exactly have a whole, arc as a character. And I understand this is based on a true story, and they're telling what actually happened without trying to embellish it too much. But in terms of making her relevant, they don't always do the best job. There's scenes where she is gone for a while, and then all of a sudden she pops up again, and you're like, oh yeah, she's back, okay, fine. The other thing too is you don't really learn a whole lot about her. I mean, you see her relationship with Mark, and how she's kind of a terrible person, in my opinion at least. But she definitely doesn't have a whole lot of depth to her outside of being this, kind of trophy girlfriend who's psychotic. And my buddy pointed out there's a line she has in at a certain point in the film where she says something about I don't think you know a thing about me. And my friend that I went with, he goes, yeah, you're right. I don't know a thing about you. So they could have done a little bit better in terms of screenwriting to make her relevant, or at least make her matter a little bit more, give her a little bit more depth. But again, Emily Blunt's performance, absolutely excellent, and the main thing that saved this character for me. Cinematography-wise, another thing that my buddy pointed out was the fact that it's very reminiscent of The Office or Parks and Rec, and the second he said that to me, I couldn't unsee it. And I tried to offer a bit of defense for it, okay, maybe this is going to be shot like a sports documentary, make it seem a lot more legit, a little less embellishment, and a little bit more authentic, less cinematic. Granted, that's not what you really want when you're watching a movie, though, so I don't know if that's going to work for everyone. I thought the film looked great. The way it was shot, it was clearly shot on film, and that's something nice to see for once. Yeah, I don't know. It's a mixed bag. So you're either going to appreciate it or you won't. I would have liked a little bit more of a cinematic scope to it, because that was something, once he pointed that out, I started thinking how would I have framed this to make this look more like a movie? And then the images in my head that I started thinking about, I'm like, man, that would be a lot cooler right now. But I don't know. This definitely had a style it was going for. I appreciated it. I didn't hate it, but maybe it could have been better. As for the plot, this is the biggest weakness of the film, because stuff just kind of happens inexplicably without a whole lot of direction. I mean, again, this is covering 1997 to 2000 of Mark Kerr's actual life and his career and what he went through, and that's fine. But when you don't really have a solid narrative, cohesively weaving stuff together, building up to certain events, and a lot of stuff just feels thrown in there, or there's pieces of the story missing, then you don't really have a movie. You just have a showcase of different scenes that are really interesting, but you're not bringing it all together. This honestly made me think of the movie I Saw the Light, which was the biopic about Hank Williams. And Tom Hiddleston was a great performer in that film. I mainly watched it because Elizabeth Olsen was in it, who played his wife, and she was great as well. But once the film actually wrapped up, I realized, oh, that's all you had to say? I mean, I was engaged the whole time. I appreciated the performances. Technically, it didn't look terrible. But narratively, I didn't feel fulfilled, and that's kind of how I was feeling again with this movie. Because seriously, there's just moments where stuff just is happening, and there's not a whole lot of exploration in it. It's just kind of like a Wikipedia article of this happened in his life, but we're not seeing the exploration of it. There's a scene at one point where Mark and Emily Blunt's character, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. They're having a conversation, and then all of a sudden there's another scene, and then immediately cuts to her on the phone with someone else saying that Mark is in the hospital. And it's like, whoa, whoa. When did that happen? Why didn't we see that happen? So a big portion of this film is Mark dealing with an opioid addiction, and so a lot of it deals with him trying to get better, except it doesn't really, because there's a point in the film where he decides he's going to go to rehab, so we see him entering these gates, and then there's another scene that's completely unrelated to Mark, and then literally 1 or 2 scenes later, we see Mark walking through the same gates out of the rehab facility. We saw nothing of the treatment inside. He's just, we're moving past that now. Kind of odd. It was getting very Cliff Note-y in its storytelling, and that was kind of frustrating in certain aspects. Again, there were a lot of moments that I really did appreciate, like all the fights, the relationship with his buddy Coleman, I believe. Mark Coleman, I think was the guy's name. And I also enjoyed every single scene with Bas Rutten, because that guy, I don't know, something about that. Maybe it's nostalgia, and it's not even like a nostalgia thing from, oh, I remember watching him fight back in the day. No, when I was a kid, he was like partnered with Cartoon Network for these PSA ads about kids getting healthy and eating right and exercising, and they were just the most chaotic, anarchically cut together ads I've ever seen in my life. And I can't help but wonder if this film was very cathartic for The Rock, because the whole film is about a guy who's a fighter, who's very confident in his abilities, and he never has lost. And what happens to him after he loses for the first time. That's very allegorical for The Rock in his career, how he was at the peak of his career. Everyone loved him. He was having so much success. And then, you know, the whole debacle with Black Adam, and then everything that happened with Red One, and people kind of turned on him. Public opinion to him dipped significantly. And there's also Mark Kerr's addiction to opioids, and I don't know if that could be allegorical for The Rock using steroids. And let me just clear something up before you start commenting back at me about that. A lot of people on the physical fitness journey have aspirations to get bulked up, and they want to know, how does The Rock of all people manage to get that massive at that age and maintain it so well? Tren. If you genuinely think him dropping 60 pounds from 300 to 240 was entirely because he's playing the Chicken Man in Benny Safdie's next movie, and you think it has nothing to do with the fact that he just spent an entire film portraying a man who was at the peak of his career, got humiliated in front of everyone, and dealt with a drug addiction. Really, man? I don't know. It just seems a little bit coincidental in my opinion, especially when Batista did the same thing just months prior. But honestly, if The Rock is going to be a lot healthier in his lifestyle moving forward and going to start actually like taking more serious acting roles and really changing public perception of him, then, you know, power to him, I guess. But the film overall, I'm curious to see how I'll feel over time, because right now I feel very on the fence about it. On the one hand, there's a lot of the technical aspects that I can appreciate, and I do like Benny Safdie as a filmmaker, and The Rock did surprise me with his performance. And again, I cannot understate how incredible the hair and makeup department's work is to make him look like Mark Kerr. But on the other hand, the story is easily the weakest point, and there's moments where it feels like stuff just kind of happens without any explicable reason. For example, there's a scene where after he's done with rehab, he's getting back into the gig of, you know, wanting to be a fighter again, and so he's training with someone who all of a sudden starts having a crippling pain in their arm because of a tendon issue or whatever. So he rushes over to this locker area where he grabs a bottle and a needle of like some sort of drug, opioid or something, painkiller, and he administers it to the guy, and he basically says, you know, hey, listen, I'm clean. This is old. I haven't used this. This is for you or whatever. It's going to help you. It's going to take all that pain away. And then it helps the guy. And then we never cycle back to that. We don't, like, that guy's not suddenly, you know, in a crippling opioid addiction either. It doesn't, you know, relapse The Rock in any way. It just kind of happens. Okay? So really, I am at a crossroads with this movie. I wanted to like it because I was willing to give it a chance. However, I did have a fair amount of skepticism as to whether or not this would actually work. I remember when it was originally announced, I thought this was going to be absolutely laughable. Turned out to be a lot better than I initially thought. But after I heard there was a 15-minute standing ovation for it, I was like, okay, might be laying it on a little bit thick here. So quite frankly, I don't really have any ill will toward this movie, and I'm very cognizant of its flaws, but I did have an overall positive experience watching it. I was engaged, I was entertained, and I was surprised by the performance. So I guess if I'm gonna give this a number, I'll just give it a 7 out of 10. Entirely possible I bring that down with time, or entirely possible that if I ever rewatch it again, I'll feel differently, but that's where I'm going to leave it for now. Certainly seen worse this year, certainly seen better this year, but I want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments, did you see The Smashing Machine? Do you think this is the best thing that could happen for The Rock's career? Or do you think this is just more of the same? This isn't nearly as good as it should be. Actually, matter of fact, comment below if you think that this will be in the awards consideration come March. I would love to hear what you have to say, good, bad, or otherwise. But please, if you're going to disagree with people in the comments, don't be a jerk about it and go at each other's throats. This is just a movie, after all, not the most important thing in the world. If you want more stuff from me that isn't YouTube exclusive, be sure to check out the links in my description. I post tons of reviews on Letterboxd, Serialized, and GG, where I post reviews for movies, TV shows, and video games. And if you're interested in short-form content, definitely subscribe to this channel, because every now and then I'll post new additions to my movie collection that I document via YouTube Shorts. So if that's something that interests you, then definitely subscribe. Be sure to check those out. And until next time, guys, God be with you, and take care.